Today we're going to focus on analyzing character relationships by asking, does the relationship impact the character negatively or positively? We have learned that every story follows a plot structure. And so one way that authors will create suspense during the rising action is to establish character relationships. Character relationships that are positive will help the character reach their goal. Character relationships that are negative will make it difficult for a character to achieve their goal. Now, keep in mind, character relationships can change from the beginning of a story to the end. But I do want you to think about, does the relationship help the character achieve their goal, or does the relationship make it difficult for the character to reach their goal? So we're looking at the short story, Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes. And the relationship that Roger has with Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones at the end of the story, how does it impact Roger? And what I've done here is I have started the process of writing a short answer in full and complete sentences. So looking at, starting here, I read the short story, Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes. The relationship Roger has with Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones at the end of the story impacts Roger. And if you said positively, you are right. At the beginning of the story, there is evidence that it was a negative relationship. However, by the end, Roger had experienced a turning point and had a positive relationship with Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. So then the next step is proving the positive relationship using textual evidence. And so I've taken a paragraph from the text I will read. And while I'm reading this, I'm going to be thinking about, what did Mrs. Jones say, do, or think? What did Roger say, do, or think that shows me the two of them have a positive relationship? In another corner of the room behind a screen was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went to the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she left behind her on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman, not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. So I'm thinking, what evidence in here shows that the relationship between Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones and Roger is positive? So she's not watching the boy to see if he's going to run. That's an example. That's action showing that she trusts him. There's also the opportunity where the boy had to run. Instead, he took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. I think that's great evidence to prove the two of them have a positive relationship. It's his action of sitting where she can see him, his action of thinking, I don't want this woman not to trust me, is showing me that the relationship at the end of the story is positive. So the next step is to add that to my short answer. I read the short story, Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes. The relationship Roger has with Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones at the end of the story impacts Roger positively. For example, when Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones was prepping something to eat, he took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye. He did not trust the woman, not trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. In text citation, Hughes, page 3. So now I have to find a second piece of evidence to prove that Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones and Roger have a positive relationship. So I'd like you to take a look and follow along as I read this text. We're looking at action showing they have a positive relationship, dialogue showing they have a positive relationship, inner thinking showing they have a positive relationship. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived or his folks or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and brunettes. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now, here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching on to my pocketbook, nor nobody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I got to get my rest now, but from here on in, son, I hope you will behave yourself." She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night." "Behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out into the street. In those 3 paragraphs, there is excellent evidence proving that Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones and Roger have a good relationship. So now what I want you to do is think about the evidence that you think best supports the theory, the inference that Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones and Roger have a positive relationship at the end of the story. I'm going to give you some time to look at this and think about it. Now you're going to fill in the space here. We've started our short answer, and you're going to add that final piece to our short answer. I will reread what we have so far. I read the short story, Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes. The relationship Roger has with Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones at the end of the story impacts Roger positively. For example, when Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones was preparing something to eat, he took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. Hughes, page 3. Another example is when. This is where you're going to find textual evidence from the text itself. You might have to rewind the video slightly, and you're going to, in the short answer box, you're going to fill in the rest of the text evidence proving that Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones and Roger have a positive relationship.